All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to RaSheed Lemon. RaSheed, thank you so much for coming on here.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem at all.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming on. I know I give you a quick little intro there for everyone listening right now at the beginning, but we kind of want to jump into a little bit. You and Greg have a little bit of history together, and
Yeah,
how you ran into to each other, which is kind of why we had wanted to talk to you and have you on the show. But I'd love
right.
to, if you kind of want to start from there. I want to throw it to you and tell us kind of how you ran into Greg and what was going on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got deployed to Afghanistan in 2012, and when I had got there, they started. We had a lot of issues out there with insider threats on the actual bases we had. I was actually the DCG Ops NCOIC, which is the Deputy Command General's NCOIC operations for the three-star general that was actually there. But they actually assigned me to the chief of staff, a colonel that I had worked for, and they figured out that my civilian job, I was in law enforcement, and they ended up asking me to help with some things. And they pretty much voluntold me to go to a program uh, where they sent me. What's no problem, and they sent me over, and I started working with Greg at that time when I actually got a chance to meet him. Didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but they told me I was going to learn some things about insider threat to help mitigate the issues that we were having, and possibly take this and teach his teaching all around Afghanistan. But that obviously changed when we were there.
Yeah, go ahead,
Brian, I
Greg. Yeah.
remember. First of all, Rashid, Brian did not get the notice of shirt color today, so
Yeah,
we'll
Oh,
I'm
see
wearing a different
if
shirt
we can.
color.
It's a Monday. Brian's a little bit
yeah,
behind the palette.
yeah,
Brian, you remember with Combat Hunter in Iraq, it was a
right,
different feel. I hit the ground in Iraq. It's very kinetic. The highest you go up is maybe a battalion brigade commander, in bed with them, move around. And then Afghanistan was completely different because I get to Afghanistan and I'm meeting with ISAF general staff and generals of
yeah.
the army and coalition nations, and they go, "Oh, give this guy anything he wants." And so the reality of the fact was that then I came down through and met this young E6, and he goes, "Nah, we're not getting any of that overhead cover or support. We're going to have to kind of build our tribe." Isn't that a fair assessment, Rashid? It was a very different view from the ground.
It really was. It was really interesting because when they brought us out there to it was a Kaya we were at, and it was just a lot going on, and they had us in this room, and I'm seeing all these people, and a lot of people took the fact that I was E6. I didn't have any kind of experience or whatever the case may be, because I was actually with a major who was there, Major Chase, I believe it was, and he was with my group. But it was an interesting start, and then learning your history was what really intrigued me when we actually started the project, and the stories that you all told.
Yeah, so that was
Yeah,
one of those kind of tough times for everyone, listening. It was like you had this major insider threat problem, right? So you had different Afghan soldiers that, U.S. soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines were training, and then one of them was kind of ended up it would kill some of them, murder them, or murder
right,
other Afghans, so they called them the green on blue incidents or green on green, where
right,
which is
right,
obviously I mean, any type of insider threat, I always think is so much worse than an external threat because they're part of the team, they're part of the group,
absolutely,
right? And so, imagine trying to have to go to work and you have a job to do and you have a training mission to do, and you got to worry about the person that you're actually training. That's just so
right,
incredibly difficult to deal with. And then it started happening a little bit, and then the kind of army, we had most of the command and the Marine Corps as well, but overall kind of said in country, like, whoa, this is like an all stop. This is something we need to address right now because this is going to
right.
tear us apart from within inside. So now, did you just kind of happen to like fall into that? Because just tell us a little bit about your law enforcement career, because I know that helped. And when you do
Yeah,
that back and forth
okay,
and you have those other skills, like people don't know that. They're just like, oh, you're just like an E6. What are you doing here? It's like, no, 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 man. Like I got a lot.
yeah,
I got a lot that I've been doing in my life.
yeah.
So
Yeah, they miscalculated when I came on the scene. But I was actually a paramedic for some years with Richmond Ambulance Authority. So and I got myself into some things. It was there's a high performance EMS system. But in Richmond at the time when I had worked for them, they actually had like extra duties. It wasn't attached to the city; it was actually a contract. But what ended up happening was we 9 times out of 10 we were the first people on the scene at in Richmond. There was a lot of murders and things going on, so I got to see a lot of stuff. But we ended up with the forensics department for the state. They recognized that we were getting there, so they put some of us through some special training. So this kind of got me started into, you know, the law enforcement part. So, and then I got into tactical medical kind of things. So I was one of the tactical medics that was on the actual ambulance that when Richmond, the SWAT team went out, we would actually do stuff, but I wasn't armed or anything of that nature. We just supported. We had vests and all that kind of stuff when we went to the scene. From there, I got hired. I actually went to, now to let y'all know, I started with the Marine Corps because I wanted to get into law enforcement, and I started to apply for all these police departments all in the Richmond area, and I kept getting denied. They said, you don't have any experience. I said, well, how am I going to get experience if you don't hire me? So I joined the Marine Corps and went in the Marine Corps, and I got obviously some experience, came back and started my my career again. From there, ended up getting on with the Virginia State Police as a trooper, because a lot of times as a medic, we would actually go to car wrecks. And then I saw these state police guys and I said, hey, I like that. So I wanted to get on with these guys. So I ended up getting hired with the state police. That was probably, that was in 1996. So they actually gave me a strong start in law enforcement. And after my first couple of years there, I got on 4 FBI task forces as a undercover agent. So I did a lot of undercover work. I did a lot of interdiction stuff, working with drugs and going around. I went through a special DEA course to help me to do some things with that. And I wanted to get on to DEA. And so so one of the colonels, believe it or not, when I was at the Marine Corps, he actually worked for the federal government, and he tried to he took me to the rack over there. The DEA was impressed, but unfortunately I did not finish my degree. So I couldn't, obviously, with that. Started working on my degree, went there, doing the online stuff, and ended up, when 9/11 happened, my shift partner was on midnight. This is how I got where I'm at now. He was a salty trooper, and he said, hey, he said, Lemon. I said, yeah, what's going on? He says, hey, they didn't take me. I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean they didn't take me? He said, they didn't hire me. I said, who? He said, the Sky Marshal. I said, what in the world is a Sky Marshal? I was like, what is that? He told me the history about it and everything. He said, take your butt home. And he said, I told him you're going to send a resume. I'm like, okay. So he said, take your butt home and do this and send it into this phone number. And I did. 2 days later, literally, I got a FedEx package with some tickets to go to Atlantic City, New Jersey, excuse me, and to interview. So this is October 2nd of 2001. And I went ahead and they were doing 50 people a day. So I was one of the first 100 to be interviewed for the job. And I ended up getting hired, but they lost my package. They sent it to Oklahoma, where the FAA headquarters were, because originally our agency was part of the FAA. And from there, got hired on, actually started in March, and I've been here ever since. Moved up through the ranks, became a supervisor. I flew for 10 years, got close to 3 million miles of flying, and became a supervisor around 2012, right before I got deployed to Afghanistan. And I did another, got promoted again into 2020 as an ASAC. So I'm the second person in charge of the field office here in Baltimore.
That's incredible. So that's one of those careers. That's what I love. That's why I tell people, someone like, it's like I told even like my little brother before he went in the military, and I was like, hey, you know what, one word of advice, just volunteer for everything. Meaning like, just when someone says, hey, I need someone for this, go do it, because you're going to meet someone and you're going to make an impression, and then that's going to open a door for you later. It's never just when you're just staying in your lane, do it, just go do whatever. And sure enough, that you sound like that. You know what else reminds me of our buddy Jim, Greg, where everyone's just like, hey, we like you.
Ground
Want to
Branch
come do
Gym.
this? And he's like, okay. And then he went from like,
Exactly.
martial
Yeah.
arts to police officer to Green Beret to this. You know what I mean? It was just like, it's one of those
That's
same
so true.
things. That's an absolute incredible story. I like hearing those
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it tells you all about the person. It's like, okay, you're someone
Yeah.
that people want to work with. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Well, and he's still doing it now.
Yeah.
And Brian, I want to bring RaSheed back to a moment in Afghanistan. Most people that get deployed don't understand what it's truly like, specifically if you're a civilian that's on a mission. And the idea is you have to go through all of these things, like for example, you have to go through laundry and have an ID for laundry and get a ticket.
Yeah.
You're in a war zone, but you have to go in and you get a laundry bag and you're like, what the hell is this? And then you have to go get these different ID cards, and the color of the outside of the ID card and the level on the band of your security, where you can go, all of that stuff is regulated, even down to which dining facility you can eat in. So, Brian, my first memory of my first trip to Afghanistan, one of many with the combat hunter, was being in a yurt with the Mongolian Air Force. And I'm sitting there going, this is absolutely horrible. And so each time that I went back with the Marine Corps for combat hunter in Afghanistan, it got much better. And then all of a sudden, ISAF comes and says, hey, Houston, we have a problem. Can we gear the specific answer towards insider threats? And I get back, and I'm in a yurt with the Mongolian Air Force again. And so apparently they requested me, because I was internationally eating at the international DFAC and going to the bathroom, just hot water for the first 3 weeks on the ground, because nothing was right. And all of a sudden, this young E6 comes in, and you weren't young, okay, but you were an E6. And he comes in and he goes, you must be Greg Williams. I'm like, well, look around. Who else would be? And Brian, I got to tell you, we hit it off, and you'll remember that we hit it off at hello. And the problem was we were two old, crusty road vets that were coppers that couldn't get anywhere with the soldiers, even though you also had the civil affairs and the U.S. Army Reserve and the military background.
Yeah, yeah. And it was really interesting there, because even when they put me over there, there was some back stuff that was happening that y'all weren't aware of, because they were fighting over where they wanted me to go. And a part of that fight was they wanted me to do force protection. Other part was doing my job. And then I had he was actually a lieutenant colonel. He was terrible. He was a terrible leader. And it was just, he made my life miserable, but I stuck with the program. And I just remembered, I had to make myself a little more valuable from what we were learning there. And when he saw that I was like this shiny toy kind of thing, it was just terrible. But I still, went to the training, got what I needed to get out of there. But what I can tell you this, the stuff I learned from combat hunter, because I had a connection with the Marine Corps, because I was in the Marine Corps 15 years, and then I had this other experience here, and it was like this. I was like, this is what I want to do. I wanted to help soldiers, because just like any law enforcement officer on the road, you want to help people do this. But this is more close to home, where we were with everything that was going on there. And I didn't want it to happen again, especially to me while I was there, because we didn't know who was who. And I just thought that the training was phenomenal. Didn't realize when you started teaching about like the psychology behind everything, and even the biological aspects, like the hippocampus, never forget that kind of stuff, and the clues and cues and clues, and the seams and gaps, all of those things stuck with me throughout the years. And not only was I able to use that for what we did there, I was able to use it in everything else. And the truth be told, everything I learned with you guys there actually helped launch my career, even when I got back home from another level, because I was going to just be a Federal Air Marshal, continue to fly and do whatever. But I wanted to be able to utilize some of the experiences and things that I've learned to help my agency and help our guys do better. Unfortunately, it didn't work out like that, like I wanted to, but I think the biggest thing I got was the inspiration from it. So I never forget that. And I never forgot that.
Well, and Brian, I don't know if you know this, that when RaSheed and I were together, many of the places we were teaching were Connex. We were teaching on the floor in the airport at Kandahar Airfield, or some other location that we had a makeshift, and embedded with our training were our Afghan coalition partners, many of whom were the likely suspects during that time of the insider threat attacks. And you'll remember, not in 2012, because 2012 was our butts were on fire.
Yeah,
But then all
yeah,
of a sudden in 2013, RaSheed and I are still bouncing around to these little places. And
right.
if you remember, Mullah Omar came out and issued the threat. And the threat was
Yeah,
literally, hey,
yeah,
find these guys and come at
yeah,
them with everything that you've got.
yeah.
And here we are in Afghanistan with prices on our head. And so I kept pointing to him, going, he's a guy from Baltimore. I'm from Detroit. I understand you.
Right.
But Rasheed is the real enemy on
Yeah,
the
I think they call
backside.
that he called that the drawn sword of God. I'll never forget
Yep.
that. Right
Yep.
before, it was the drawn sword of God, and I was even learning a little bit more about the Taliban and how they operated. But they actually were bringing the fighting season a month earlier than they normally
Right.
did the time frame. So, and I was trying to understand all these particular dynamics. But you're right, and it was we didn't know who we were teaching
Nope.
or what was going on. But even after I'll tell you this, the other part was after we had left, they had told me take all that stuff, and I was understanding the contracts, and I didn't really understand how all that worked. They
Mhm.
wanted me to take your material, plagiarize it, which they pretty much forced me to do,
Yep.
and create another program. And I remember you were upset about that part. I mean, about how they took all the hard work that you made and they did it another way without really giving you the credit. But I always made sure that I gave the credit back to where it came from, only because I didn't feel that was right. That was an integrity issue. And so that came from that lieutenant colonel who was pushing that thing. So I always made sure that I gave the credit back to where it came from. And I was a student that was learning at that point in time.
You were
And
an
the good,
incredible student, first of all, and you were
yeah,
also
yeah,
a great aid in everything I did, and for my personal security to me
yeah,
pointing out that you were the one in uniform. So if somebody was going to be killed, it would better be you than me, because I was still a civilian hanging him out there
yeah,
in front. But listen, Rasheed, I've changed. Long, rich history of having people plagiarize my work and steal from me. And every one of the military commands that I worked under literally told people, steal his thumb drives, get any of his discs, any of his notes, whatever you
yeah,
got. You got the same briefing. And back then it really bothered me because, I had no money. I was a
yeah,
nobody. And here I'm taking the same risks as everybody else. We were, you remember the infamous Afghan pizza explosion across the
yeah,
courtyard from where we were teaching, and we had to
yeah,
wait till the smoke cleared in the classroom, and the bodies were out before
yeah,
we
yeah,
started
yeah,
teaching
yeah,
again. So we
yeah,
we all had the same risk. But Brian, you knew that too. You knew the Marine Corps had done that. You knew
Yeah.
that every one of the other forces had done that. And Rasheed, now looking back at all the stolen information and everything else, it's like, you know what? At the end of the day, it helped save lives. At the end of the day, it built careers. It opened doors. It allowed people to do things.
yeah,
Even your great story.
yeah. But at the end of the day, right is right, wrong is wrong. And I think that when you look at serving, you still have to have some sort. I mean, they preach the leadership, and part of it is honor, integrity, and everything.
Mhm.
So I believe in those things, and that kind of bothered me. But I made sure that I at least gave pointed back from where I was able to do. This wasn't me. This is something I learned from
Right.
from the individuals that actually had it. So I always pointed back, and I always kept the name and email. I know we kind of lost contact over the years, but the good part of it was that when y'all had left, they had me write this whole program. So I had to rename it, had to call it, they called it something else. So ended up calling it Advanced Insider Threat Detection, AITD is what we ended up naming it. And they literally sent me all over Afghanistan. I mean, after the fact, we counted from, I guess, all the time, trained over 3,000 contractors and service members and
That's
also
great.
coalition partners after that. I mean, I went everywhere, and they had, based upon just the material and just the being able to present the material as you taught us in the classroom, and keeping the integrity of it, I had 1-star generals, 2-star generals calling, hey, what's this Staff Sergeant Lemon? Send him over here. And
That's so great.
Yeah, so they were sending me everywhere. I had my own helicopter. I got pictures of me flying in.
We never got that when we were together, so I want to know how that one worked out, buddy.
Yeah, they were sending me. I was going out to the Wardak province, I believe it was, Camp Span, I believe it was where I was going, and I was in it. I was by myself because they would send a handler with me. So I used to have the sergeant major go with me, but he didn't go. But they said, "Hey, you got to go," and so I'm out there and I'm flying in this Huey, and I'm sitting in this little door, and then we're flying over these mountains, and then the helicopter's moving slow like this. I'm like, what's going on? I say, yeah, the air is too thin for the helicopter to fly. And I'm like, I was familiar with that because I was a mechanic in the Marine Corps for 46s.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there in the door with my weapon, sitting here like, man, if somebody actually has like a Barrett sniper rifle, I'm dead.
You're down. Yeah. Yeah.
And
for those listening that don't know what a CH-46 is, that's the banana-shaped two-prop Marine helicopter that while it's spitting hot fluid on you, if from the inside you think you're going down, that's actually a good sign. That means it's still pumping the hydraulic fluid.
Yeah.
You know? How did you land in Wardak? How did that end up?
Well, this was actually, I was in a Huey in this one, a Huey, but I was saying I was a mechanic. I was a mechanic in Marine Corps. But yeah, they say if it's not leaking, it's not working. That's what we always used to say. So yeah, those 46s loved them. That was the reason why I got the Marine Corps, was because they had they were decommissioning all the 46s, and as a staff sergeant in the Marine Corps, I was too senior for them to retread me. So they were trying to place me somewhere else and they couldn't. So they ended up they tried to find me a job, they couldn't. So I said, hey, you gotta go. And so I ended up, because they moved with the V-22 Ospreys.
Yeah, which is not going.
And Brian, I want to make sure that you understand too. Brian knows this, RaSheed, you know this, but many of the listeners might not know. We made a difference. So 2012, 2013, all the time on the ground. 2014, insider threats were virtually non-existent, and it was credited to a number of things. But one of the huge credits was to this program, and thankfully that you kept the faith and kept out there teaching the curriculum. That's fantastic.
Well, I can give you a big testament or testimony to that, is the fact that the training that we had at the time, I actually, when I was going around teaching, the Alabama National Guard was the Sec 4. And there was a situation to where after we had taught them, literally, it was like a week after. And we also included the Guardian Angel program, because I started working with our soft guys over at Camp Moorhead, and we had to learn about the Guardian Angel program. So we had a little bit of connection with that as well. And I had trained the whole Alabama National Guard. I had a good relationship with them. And it was, I can't remember what day it was, but there was a Afghan that was in the uniform, and the little things that we taught them, the cues and the clues and everything, the Afghans started to go connect. But the Alabama National Guard private, I believe it was, killed the assailant that was trying to kill their team, and they credited it to the teachings that we had taught them. So that was probably one of the biggest things to hang your hat on, because that private, because he listened to in the class, he actually saved his whole team, with the Guardian Angel program and other things, but it was like, it made him more aware. And I think that the training made so many people more aware of the micro behaviors, as you used to teach, that they were able to pick up on something, that something might be wrong. And if it's a duck, it is a duck, so and that pretty much helped.
Yeah, and RaSheed, that's a perfect example. If you take a look at the 5 combat multipliers: tactical cunning, tactical patience, geometry of fire, Good Shepherd, and Guardian Angel, everybody knew Guardian Angel was the name that they wanted to swipe and use because it was the right thing. That hidden presence that was always on the lookout. So when you take a look at in all of the time that you were able to use pieces of the program, you're saying that you're still using it today as assistant supervisor, air marshal in charge, right? I mean, that makes me so proud. That to me, there's a legacy, Yeah.
And I've been trying to pass that on. Matter of fact, when I was an instructor in Atlanta as a Federal Air Marshal. I was a senior Federal Air Marshal at the time before I got promoted. My supervisor at the time allowed me to kind of teach some of these things to our guys. It wasn't part of our actual curriculum, but he was just utilizing the experience had where I could teach folks.
That's kind of what I wanted to ask you too, because you got a
Yeah.
lot of experience as an air marshal. So for people who don't fly a lot, like when you start flying a
Right.
lot, like you see every, like it's wild. I mean, what happens
Yeah.
up in the air now? It's just you wouldn't even believe it. And especially we got to do some training with some of your folks or the air marshal instructors out at the training facility a few months ago. Same thing. Like I was asking them stories, and I'm just like, holy cow! But I kind of want to see how did it. So you were doing the insider threat stuff, and then then you go back kind of as your air marshal, you had that time, how did that stuff help during that? Were you able to kind of do you have anything you can share? I know there's a lot, you're still working there, so there's only so much you could say and talk about, but something where you're like, hey, because of this I noticed and then I was able to intervene or something like that. It could be anything. I'm sure most of it was probably just drunk passengers that you probably don't want to get involved with, but
Well, when I actually got back, I was actually promoted, but it was more so passing these particular things that experience that I had on
yeah,
to onto my other guys that were actually still flying. Because so that was the main thing, but it made me more aware, and then it made me be able to interject some of these things and some of the things that I actually was trying to do within the agency. I've actually talked to, we have an insider threat section now. We're revamping our whole organization. And the person that was the SAC over the insider threat in the beginning stages, I started sharing some things with him. He was an old Marine Corps guy as well. I believe he was a sniper or something like that. And I started sharing some things with him. I'm not sure how they may have utilized it, but they've actually asked me questions here or there, about some things, so I was able to interject a little bit, but not so much that. And there were some things that I was able to pass on to some of the guys that I flew from my experiences over there. But it wasn't like a direct teaching of the ATID program, but they knew what I did. That's why I was getting the questions.
And Brian, I would ask RaSheed this. RaSheed, you got to see both the Combat Hunter program and the Insider Threat Awareness training on the ground in Afghanistan with coalition force members from numerous different countries, U.S. forces from every spectrum, from special forces all the way down to the ground troops. And we worked with the coalition Afghan partners, ANCOP and the Afghan National Army. The thing, and I'm begging for an endorsement on this, you got to see that it had nothing to do with culture. Everybody got it, no matter who they were, male, female, old, young, right? I mean, because you got to see that on the ground. I'm not just making it up when I say that it works everywhere. You got to see it work everywhere. Isn't that a fact?
Absolutely, I did get to see it work everywhere, and that came from a lot of what you taught, and it made even me more aware culturally that where you said the grief is the same in any other culture as it would be in our culture, and you were able to recognize these particular cultural, I guess, these norms, if you will, from each one, and that will give you a clue as to what's going on. I even still use it as to like, and I tell you, I use this even in my job today. In this respect, with that is like, who's the most important person in the room? With the toes pointing, who's doing all that stuff. Is so true. I don't know if people realize that you are able to tell if somebody's going to shake your hand and twist your hand, all those little things. I remember everything, and it's helped me to recognize, like who's who and what's what, and I'm able to either sit back and scan and see what's happening on. But you're absolutely right. It didn't matter who it is or what culture. I'm able to now tell what's going on even when I look at people. I tell them, like, something's not right here, and then it just brings my attention to it. And then if you investigate it, as you used to say, you investigate, you have a little bit more information than what you just previously had. So
no, and that's the thing. Sometimes it's just knowing where and how to start, right? So you gave a perfect example of like the young, private from Alabama National Guard who's like, hey, wait a minute, this is one of those things you're talking about right here, or this is what we saw that was different. And sometimes that's just enough, because the people in the room will tell you, because we took that insider threat from Afghanistan, and then we pointed at the Army, said, hey, can you address a couple problems? We've got a suicide issue up in Joint Base Lewis McChord that was the worst there than any other place in the Army. And then they also had the SHARP program, the sexual harassment assault response prevention program, but they had sexual assault problems. So they said, well, can you because we classify those two things as insider threats. To us, that's the same thing. And we were doing a course up in the Pacific Northwest, up at JBLM, and it was like one of our larger ones. It was a 1-day thing. We were doing 120 soldiers in there, you know, on these big little groups, all the folding chairs, and we're doing our thing. And then after the first break, I mean, this is after the first break, in one of the groups, suddenly this young sergeant is sitting alone in that back row. He's not sitting, that no one else is sitting next to him again. And we're like, okay, well, there's your place to start. And the folks from the Army were like, well, what do you mean? I was like, look, everyone, when you come back into a room, if you're watching a movie, you're watching a presentation, whatever it is, you sit in your seat, you take ownership of it. That's yours. So what happened that all of these people decide to move away from that person? And they're like, oh, so you think, I was like, yeah, that's where you start. Sometimes it's that obvious. Sometimes it is that easy to tell. The people, the environment will speak to you and tell you. Those soldiers knew, oh, they're talking about this guy, and they all wanted to do what? Get the heck away from him. You know what I'm saying? So it's those little things. I mean, just that little bit right there, or the suicide prevention ones too. Like, we had the same thing after our first break of the 1-day course. We're an hour in, and you had people coming up going, hey, you're talking exactly like one of my teammates. Hey, you're talking about this. Hey, I think we need to do. And literally the behavioral health folks for Army, who were great. We had some amazing people work with. They were almost overwhelmed. They're like, we didn't know we would get. I'm like, yeah, we get immediate results. That's our goal. Like, we drop in and let's go. Like right now, let's find this. So I think it was just kind of how we do stuff. And we always try to tell people, you know, you don't have to be RaSheed Lemon with all the experience and the law enforcement and military and multiple branches and serving all over the world. You don't have to be that to get it. And in fact, you can't be everywhere. Can't have just you doing this, right? It's got to be that person on that front line. And I think empowering that's what those courses, everyone, you know, I'm sure you have the same experience, liked it so much because it was about, hey, we're all in this right now. There is no one person who has more power in this. Like, it has to be the lowest guy or girl on the ground saying, hey, I see something odd here. Does anyone else notice that? And those little things are what I always loved about it, and why we got to, I think, I would just point it in a different direction, even though the insider threat stuff is the same to us, whether it's someone you're going to train or someone in your team or whatever it is. The insider threat's always the worst to an organization. I mean, it tears you apart from the inside.
And you know, Brian, we've never stopped teaching, RaSheed. So we've been on the road just in different forms, and we teach law enforcement and first responders and healthcare professionals and churches and schools and Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies. And the same principles have always applied. And Brian, I want to point this out. Had it not been for RaSheed and his rich level of experience, he had all of the experience come to him. It was divine intervention that they put us together, because he was able to look at, you know, people think, you remember, RaSheed, people stole the PowerPoint photos, or they stole this and they tried to do. You remember how ridiculous that got? And we kept saying the power is not in the PowerPoint. It's in, we show you a couple of these cues that you can use in everyday conversation, and then you build your own rapport. And so you took what you learned in the class, and because of your rich experience, it springboarded you forward, and you were able to be an incredible instructor. Listen, folks, Rashid and I didn't talk for like 10 years. And then all of a sudden, it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, where she drops me a line on LinkedIn and goes, hey, how are you? What's going on? And it's like, oh my gosh, our career paths have, continued down this. But had it not been for him, Brian, embracing it and saying, okay, what can I learn from this? Because you were an experienced vet by the time you met me. You didn't need me to teach you about road work or about UC work or, you know, how to boot a door, but you still glammed onto it immediately. What was that like? What was it like to you on that side when you first saw it? Because a lot of people describe it as, man, a light bulb went off, and you're like, you know, the most common comment I guess we get, Brian, is, where was this my whole career? You know, did you have anything like that at all, RaSheed?
No, it's honestly, it was engaging. It was everything was engaging, and then the biggest thing I saw was, it was just everything that I learned was very inspiring, and I was like, I could it was helping me even look at myself in some of the things, but then more than that, I was looking at it as, this is so valuable for everybody else. So I've always learned, you know, the student is never above the master, you know. So I wanted to be, I wanted to learn from the men that were actually doing this thing, and I want to be like you in a sense, because it was, the whole thing was inspiring. Your team was inspired. politics. It wasn't about all these other things. It was about, let's get this mission done,
Right.
and just having a passion for it. But the other thing, what I think that what I learned from that was that if people haven't seen the old presentations, I'm not sure how you may have changed them. They were just pictures. You know, there was just like, and then you had to be the one to pull all of the, and well, you know, I have my master of divinity, we call it exegesis, you know, and being able to take the meaning up out of the text. So I could show a picture, so they could steal the PowerPoint all day, like you said,
Yeah.
but they couldn't tell the story like you could tell the story, because many of those folks didn't have the experience, you know, like that lieutenant colonel probably didn't do anything in his career other than what he did was, you know, just yelling at people and just, you know, not being a real leader. So you could put a picture of it, go ahead, tell the story about this to help your soldiers. He couldn't do it, but because he didn't have a passion for the people. So
we still see that, RaSheed, to this day. We have people, and you know some of them, that come up and go, oh yeah, I was a student of this program, even though I never heard of them. And they take one of those photos and a couple of the lines that we used in class 20 years ago. You get what I'm saying? And they say it. RaSheed, did I just a sidebar question, did I hide that I was scared to death pretty well? Because I was frightened all through Iraq and Afghanistan. Did I hold it in pretty well? Could you tell?
You did a good job, because I enjoyed myself. I was like, this is great. I felt I'll be honest with you, I really felt like y'all were taking me through selection or something like that. You know, I had like this really super ninja stuff that I can actually do. I wasn't the super ninja guys. I was down at Camp Moorhead, but I was able to make a difference, you know. But you did a good job. But I was inspired. Me, literally, for a lifetime, inspired by what I learned from the Insider Threat Detection Awareness Program while we were there. It was a life changer for me, to be honest with you. And I think that's what kind of pushed me to want to do more in my agency, because I realized I couldn't do anything unless I was in the positions to actually do it. And so here or there, I was even so my training staff here where I'm at, I'm in the position to where I could tell them, hey, why don't we start teaching this thing too, or teaching bits and pieces of what we have to our guys, because we're running into an older workforce and a little more complacent because we haven't had a 9/11. And then we and very similar to Afghanistan, we're doing a lot of organizational changes. So we know ripping in and ripping out, people don't pay attention to certain things. And then we got a lot of people retiring. And so there's a lot going on. And I think that folks need to be a little more aware of what's going on in the, on the operational side, but then also on the in-house side of what's happening.
Because and that's everywhere we go, right? Excuse me. What we were talking about is during those times of transition, right? People coming in and out, things turning over, right? That creates those seams and gaps, and that's where bad things happen, the seams and gaps, right? But that's, those are points for danger, but also for opportunity, right? So the idea is like you have that. So what is the common thread? And that's every organization, whether it's a government one, especially because now you're getting up there, you're going to be at that SES level, which means okay, then a new administration can come in, and then you gotta go find a new job, or different things happen, and so you have that turnover. And then guess what? Now the next team is basically dealing with the same problems that the last team did, and then you get much farther on because there's no continuity there. And that organizational change is constant, right? We all know it's going to happen. And so part of what this does, without having to rely on a thing or new technology or way, it's, hey, this is something that everyone can use to go through. Because what I love is your reaction is, because it's the same thing for me and for a lot of people, is, man, I learned this, and now I can look back on my own experiences and pull more out of them. So that's the idea, is because everywhere we go, there's people there they got all the knowledge, they got all the answers, right? They sometimes don't even realize it, right? Everyone on the team, it's like, you're not going to just hire or bring someone in from outside and have them tell you what to do and how to do things. Like most people at an organization they know where the points of friction are. They know what they need to do. But getting everyone to talk about it and get on the same page with the same lexicon. Oh yeah, I saw that problem too. That's the biggest thing that needs to happen at a lot of places, because once we do that, once you and I have a common thread, then it doesn't matter what the challenge is, right? We can figure that out as it goes along. So,
and the one thing I think, even knowing what I know and what I've learned, I think it makes me just as from a macro level, when we're looking at, our country at this point in time, it makes me a little concerned, because one of the things we talk about, ruses and all these different things, And then we're looking at things. I'm just wondering if America itself is even these seams and gaps. We have a lot of them, and
Right.
where we're going, we've caught just so many people here recently down at the border. Is something going to happen again in our country on a greater level too? But just everything that I've learned, it just helps me to be aware of even my personal life, and then even from where I'm at now, even looking at things on a bigger picture, and then how can I? And I always wonder how can I help as best I can. So
Yeah.
I can retire now. I'm actually my retirement eligibility date with everything was March of this year, but I still want to serve. So I want to be able to stay as long as I can, as long as they keep me, to be able to inject or interject whatever I can to help somewhere, and be a part of, keeping our country safe. So,
and you're doing that every day. And here's one of the things that a lot of times our viewers and listeners don't know. So you get a good program, you get a combat hunter,
yeah,
you get an ASAT program with the Army, you get an IT SAT, and then all of a sudden you go, I get promoted up and out, or people leave, or the situation on the ground changes. So somebody goes back and they go, hey, what was that really cool program that was called that we all went through, right? And the idea is what happens is the longevity of a program, if it's a very popular program, the first thing that they do is open it up for bids to people that have never done it before and can do it for a fraction of the cost. You know that. And then all of a sudden they say, okay, well, the first thing we want to do, we want to disassociate whoever built it so we can change the name of the course. And then what happens is we don't understand that all of a sudden we got the third grade teaching the second grade, and we've got that VHS tape, if anybody knows what that is, that's been duplicated so many times. It's like weak, and we're trying to look through all the fog on it, like an old TV serial from the 50s. And it's not the same program. And RaSheed, I've been in rooms where people use my slides and my quotes, and Marin will smile at me and nod, and I'll go over and I'll go, well, where did you learn that? And they go, I don't know, it's always been part of it. And it's like, I'm that guy. That's me in the corner. How do we, well, two things. One, I think you've addressed the challenge. The challenge is that because we haven't been gut punched in a while, we're unwary. We're not going to be ready for it. And how do you keep people involved in the program even after that cycle has run its course? How do you keep people interested and excited? I know it's hard for us. It's lifting weights up stairs every single day, it seems like. Do you feel that way sometimes?
Yeah, I do. You talking about keeping it into the program of this, or just in general?
Yeah, keeping good ideas relevant.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of great programs of record out there, a lot of them.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of people, what I know is they're very ambitious to take that to get the next best thing, or to try to make themselves famous or whatever. But I think that when you don't have the right motives or the intent, it never works the way it should work. But it is hard to keep those good ideas on the surface. But then I'll be honest with you, I'll tell you this: a lot of people were intimidated because of the ideas or the things that you may learn from that. Like this program, when I talk about insider threat, and I'm like, well, this is this, and I kind of talk to them only because I'm trying to share what I know. Or they get intimidated; they don't want to hear anything. It's like, okay, now they don't want to get that information, and that hurts the program or hurts with who they can help. But it is hard to keep these things up because of just we're dealing with people every day, and their selfish motives or whatever it is, So
you're right.
I feel that.
Hey, Brian, I still had, I looked it up the other day. I got my briefcase that I carry around with me. I've updated the briefcase, but the contents are virtually identical. And I've got my old green notebook, RaSheed, that I bought at PX in Afghanistan just for the trip to Afghanistan. The very first thing I wrote in it was Ephesians 6:10-18, put on the full armor of God. And I carried it with me all the time because I was like, look, God, I'm doing the work. I'm not a slacker, because I didn't want to get pinched. How has faith seen you through everything? Because folks, look up RaSheed. He's an author. You're very active in your church in addition to your work.
So much
how did that
experience.
help you, get to where you are?
Well, on the other sid, I rededicated my life back to Christ in 1999. And I was not the greatest at the beginning, but I was learning. there were some things that I wanted to do, and I wanted to be able to take the gospel message out. And I was ordained as a deacon, went from there. But what really got me was in really 2015. I had remarried, met my wife. She's a phenomenal lady. She's a worship leader and everything. And God gave me a vision to actually, we planted a church or ministry. I don't say church, but I say ministry because we're moving a lot because of my job. So wherever we plant, we either minister to people and to do that. I've ministered to so many people on my job. I've married folks, I've counseled people, I've done all the things in there. So it's all about serving down and serving up whenever you can, and serving across the plane as well. But I've always done it. I went to Regent University, got my Master of Divinity and in biblical studies. I was really interested in the ancient Near Eastern history and everything. And I wanted to be able to share that knowledge to other people to make them more aware even of the gospel truth. And so my ministry, my wife and I, we're doing Zooms now once again, and we have a lot of people that kind of follows. We were doing like Facebook Lives at one point. We had like 700-800 followers every week.
Nice.
That were following us, just being inspired and things of that nature. But we're doing things on a smaller scale now, but we still minister to a lot of people because we realize even like with insider threat, right. the insider threat in us is the enemy in me. And so we try to teach people that kind of thing about how to, the scripture says, work out your own soul salvation with fear and trembling. So we teach people how to deal with self. And then they're able to do things in life. People are going through things a lot. And I have a passion for that. I have a passion for men and even our veterans. I really love, because our vets deal with, they say post-traumatic stress disorder and things of that nature. So I like to be able to deal with, help many of them. So my faith has kept me grounded in many ways. In everything that I do, from my job, even preaching the gospel message as well.
That's great.
That's incredible because you're such that mentor, coach, mindset and everything that you do. I love it.
Leader.
Yeah,
exactly.
But and that's kind of missing in a lot of places. I think that's why people gravitate towards different groups. Sort of it gives them that structure, or gives someone in there, tell them whether that is a good group or a bad group. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like you're looking for some of that. And especially with us on the private sector, go from the, you do military, you just know you're constantly training a replacement because you're going somewhere, you're going up and out. Like, so you have to constantly develop people. So it's built in even more so than a lot of people realize. And so you outside of that military type structure, it doesn't happen a lot of that, especially in like a private workforce. In a lot of places, it's like every man or woman for themselves. So they're trying to get ahead and they're not developing those people. But then, the company that actually negatively affects the company. So it might be individually great for that person, but for that organization over time, that's unsustainable. You have to be able to develop that next person, because now it takes someone you're going to hire on, and now they don't even learn everything that they need to know for a year. Well, you just lost out on a year of them performing their job really well, and just building that into everything that you do, which just sounds exactly like what you do. And what we always try to do is that mentor coaching concept is huge. And a lot of people don't know how to do it, right? Because they haven't had any training in it. Military, you kind of get, hey, you go teach it. It's like, what? Oh yeah, now you have to go do it. It's like, oh, okay. So you get thrown into it sometimes, even when you're not fully prepared. But having that as just your life, when in everything that you do, it makes all of it easier, right? Because I do the same thing. I give, how many examples in class now do I, Greg, when we talk about?
It doesn't make you popular, I tell you.
No, but how many times in class where I go, hey, here's an example, and instead of giving something from me being a sniper in the Al-Anbar province of Iraq and do this, it's like, hey, here's what I do with my daughter. You know what I mean? Or here's an example of how I implement that at home.
It's so powerful because people know. Look, just like your faith-based, just like your peer-to-peer, your mentor, your servant leadership, people do it wrong. And we got a lot of people that are out there and using those words and purporting to know what they're talking about. But you know what? They forgot. If you're telling somebody else's story and it's not a compelling story from the Bible, you got to rein it in a little bit, because you know what? The idea of Brian talking about his 9-year-old insurgent at home and teaching her how to turn off the lights to conserve energy, Brian, those resonate with everybody that's listening. And that's what RaSheed and I try to do. I'm trying to bring up too with talking about Abrahamic religion. Everybody said, "Oh man, that's off." Rasheed, how many times that I was up there was I talking about where the Garden of Eden with and
Yeah,
even the people
yeah,
in the audience were looking and going, "Holy crap, I never knew that." And it's like, yeah, these are your brothers. We're all brothers and
right,
sisters here, and that opened their hearts.
right,
There was less killing because there was more understanding. And the
right,
Taliban can't get you to kill people that you know are your brothers and sisters. That's the
right.
hard part, you know? So I saw that all over. And Brian, I tell you what, your transformation as an instructor is only because you started feeling it so much in your life that you were going like, hey, it's a facet of everything I do. It's
Right.
not put my training hat on, put
Right.
my insider threat
Right.
hat on,
It's
right?
yeah, no,
So,
that's exactly we talked about that before. I'm sure you've seen that too, Rasheed. Where were you? Okay, now we're gonna focus on this issue. It's like, no, man. There's a core set of competencies in everything that we do. Why don't
yep.
we just
Right.
get really good at that central hub, and then all of these other ones will kind of fall in place. But we kind of take that look. I mean, we talk about that all the time. I'm sure you've seen
Right.
that in your career as well.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
But
how do you,
oh, go ahead.
I just got to know because I look at the rich tapestry of life like a dream catcher that you built so far, and I know you're still in the game and you're trying to move around in there. What do you see the next 2, 5, and 10? Where do you want to be? I know you want to keep influence humans, and that's amazing, and that
Right.
you're keeping the training alive. That's amazing. But what's going to be your like? I tell Brian all the time. I just want to leave a legacy. I don't care that my name's on it. I just want the program to survive. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Well, that is the $1 million question that I've had even for myself here. There's so many things I want to do. So I'm up for retirement for this job where I'm at, and I can leave, but I want to stay as long as I can. The military, I'm retiring from them as well. But what I did was, because I wanted to serve, I wanted to look to do something different. And I thought I wanted to teach still. I wanted to teach something. I was looking at the private sector and what was out there. That was one of the reasons I said, hey, can I do something? I wanted to see if
All
there was
right.
anything to do. Or because we had that relationship in the past, maybe I could be something. I wanted to do something that was worth something. So, but what I did do was I had some opportunities. They have what they call a succession program with us. So I'm looking at to run my own field office as a SAC. And I wanted to, and then I also started applying for federal security director positions across the TSA. And literally for the past 2 weeks, I've been interviewing for all these jobs. And I got actually referred for a few of them. And I just interviewed last Thursday for the deputy FSD for federal security director for Baltimore and several other locations, as they said. And so those opportunities have been opening up for me as well. So I want to do that. And then there's a part of me that wants to go ahead and establish a church in a location and being able to do that aspect too. But that's where I kind of see where I'm going. But I think for the next 10 years, as long as they keep me, I'll serve in the government while I can, and to see how I can help. And maybe, I even thought about, we kicked around the idea of even running for state delegate, or maybe Congress. I try to get on a nonpartisan, because I can, with the Hatch Act, there's only so much I can do.
Yep.
The nonpartisan position, I was recommended by my state senator and a state delegate in Virginia to be on the board for veterans. But I didn't realize how political it was, because they had all like the sergeant majors, 06s, and everybody. And I haven't seen them do anything. I want to do something for the veterans, especially here in Virginia, so close to Walter Reed and all the different things here. But I applied for that. So I'm still trying to figure out where to go there. But the next step is seeing where the federal security director jobs go. So,
Brian, how many times do we ask people like what the next 2, 5, and 10 are, and we hear crickets? And the great thing is, Rasheed, you've got it all planned, man. You've got a whole bunch of irons in the fire. You don't know where God's going to take you, but you got a bunch. And what's funny about string theory about science. Brian and I had just come off of teaching federal agents and air marshals in Atlantic City, and all of a sudden I check my LinkedIn when I get home, and there's a message from you after so many years, which is great. The idea that our orbits keep crossing each other, that our paths keep crossing, and that we've got a bigger plan for us and for the safety and security of our nation and our soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines and first responders and everybody. It just invigorates me. It opens up a whole bunch of new doors for the next few years.
Yeah. So, I'm still trying to figure it out. Nothing's perfect or set in stone. I got back into school again. I'm working on my MBA in finance and economics.
That's so good.
But that was the only reason why I did that was because moving up, I didn't have that for the government aspect, having that financial background, because we're just law enforcement. We just kick in doors, planes and stuff. I didn't get hold on one second. Oh, okay. I need to turn this down just a little bit. They were from the next door.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And so, yeah, no worries.
That's the boss coming through right now.
Yeah, well, I have one of my fams. He's taking a test next door. So, but it's okay. I just had to turn my volume down. But let me just tell him I got it. So I apologize.
No, not a problem. Not a problem.
So Brian, I think what's clear while he's doing that is that RaSheed also has a plan to have the Right of Greg podcast and do away with Brian Marin. He's going to try to edge in there, I think. I'm just saying. So what would you do if you were the new Brian Marin, RaSheed?
Oh, my gosh.
Get him started. That's so funny.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you, Akan, coming on and talking about some of the stuff. And it's interesting, how your career has been affected by it, or you attribute it, a lot of your stuff to that program that, Greg was implementing, and then you had to take the ball and run with, and knowing it was, hey, someone stole the ball from Greg and gave it to you. You had to go do it. But yeah. So no, but we appreciate talking to you about it, and we love hearing the stories, and your background is absolutely incredible. I always tell people that's always like, when I meet people who do that, they're like, hey, I was in the reserves here and I was doing this, and it did like 3 careers all at the same time, and you just gain so much knowledge and experience. So I'm glad to hear that you're still applying that, because you like to serve for the federal government and in the work that you do, because a lot of people take that and they go out and they shop around and get some company to pay them a lot of money, and because they're impressed by the resume, where you're still trying to serve, which we respect and appreciate so much. It's glad to hear that. Everyone wants to say, oh, these SES and GS workers are all a bunch of this, that, and the other thing. And I'm always like, yeah, have you ever met one individually? Like, it's, maybe that's just some stereotype that you heard. It might not be true. But it's good to hear that we have people on the inside like that, just fighting to do what's right, and keeping that mission forward and keeping it going every single day. That's the tough part. It's easy to come on Facebook or social media anywhere and rant and rave about politics and this, that, and the other thing, but a lot of people aren't willing to get in there and actually do the work. So
and I would add one thing, Brian. I know we're bringing it in for a landing. RaSheed, I would tell you this: one, we all want to know what's next for RaSheed, so please keep us in the loop on that. 2, we hopefully we're going to cross paths again later this year if we get something going in Harper's Ferry. And the third thing is, as much as you such kind words, I'm trying to remain humble of how I may have inspired your trajectory at some point in your life. I want you to know that you inspired me as well. There was so many times that you kept me going day to day, and wouldn't have been able to do that without your support.
Thank you. I appreciate you all for having me and just inviting me. I'm humbled by it. And I just, anything that I can do to help be part of whatever, I'm open and I'm game.
That's great.
We appreciate that, RaSheed. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and everyone for listening. Thanks for listening. Don't forget that training changes behavior.